Ole Miss added Edwin Joseph from Florida State, and he can be the final piece to the Rebels secondary.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Into this crossover, Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On the Portal. I am Brian Smith, along with longtime Ole Miss fan and former staffer Stephen Willis, and we're going to be talking about the possibility of the Rebels dropping off. I don't think so, but I actually spoke to somebody who thinks they might not make the final 10. I'm a little surprised by that. We'll get into that later in the show. We'll talk about quarterbacks Keegan Croucher going against Cruz Jenkins in Thursday night's big game in the state of Tennessee. And to start the show, as I noted, Edwin Joseph at Ole Miss. I think it's going to be a big part of what happens this season. We're going to talk about that first. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Calci. For a limited time, download the Calci app, use code Locked On, get $10 when you trade $10. So here's the deal. For those you don't know, I also operate Locked On Seminoles. I am very familiar with Edwin Joseph. He came out of Chaminade Madonna. And if you don't know what high school that is, here's all you need to know. They win state titles almost every year, and a guy by the name of Jeremiah Smith played there. So that puts it in perspective on whether or not they're good. Joseph was recruited at a very high rate, Auburn, Louisville, Penn State, or, just down the list. He was a 4-star recruit on the 247 composite. We just didn't know where he was going to play. Was it going to be receiver? Was it going to be corner? Was it going to be safety? He's just a really good athlete. He's kind of settled into playing safety at the collegiate level. But he's a South Florida guy that had all the opportunities. Now he's at Ole Miss. I think he will be better for the following reason. Last year at Florida State, they completely changed their defense when they added former Nebraska defense coordinator Tony White. He is zone heavy. He wants to confuse and trick everybody, which some teams are going to because of all these bunch formations. I get it. But it didn't necessarily go great for Florida State because they'd have 4 or 5 great plays in a row, then they'd have a coverage bust, whether it was a linebacker, corner, safety, whatever. I'm thinking that Pete Golding's system, while that there's some trickery to it as well, you always want to confuse quarterbacks, will be a little bit more simple. I could be wrong, but I can tell you that regardless, once whether the play starts zone or man, eventually it's always man. You got to cover the guy in your area, and Joseph is a very good athlete. Whether you play him in single high, whether you play him in the box, whether you play him at nickel, he can run. He can run with South Florida guys. And if you can run with South Florida guys, we're good. So I'm curious to see how Pete Golding and his defense use him. But Stephen, as you know, Pete Golding's worked with Saban, etc. They may even change, depending on the opponent, how they use him, especially with the Louisville game coming up. First game, you know that Brahm's going to have some stuff for that. That's probably not a very fun first week matchup, to be honest, but it's a very challenging one and interesting one. What do you think is going to happen with Edwin Joseph and the Rebels?
Well, the interesting thing is practice has been completely locked down by Pete Golding. It's actually more locked down than it was a year ago under Lane Kiffin. It's really locked down. They've had interviews with Pete Golding, I think once, maybe twice this thing. They've had coordinators as it's gone through, players, but nobody has been allowed in practice except for 7 to 10 minute periods that is like punting. You can't really tell much of anything. Now, I get it. Ole Miss is a top 10 team and they can get away with that. And other teams that need the recognition, they need the excitement. Okay. But because of that, players like Edwin Joseph, we don't get to see. The reason he is getting brought up is because on Super Talk Mississippi with Michael Borky and Brian Haydad, Pete Golding was interviewed talking and was asked the one player that he wasn't asked about that he felt like he should be asked about that is going to have a big year. And he specifically mentioned Edwin Joseph. Now, you mentioned Tony White at Florida State, who came from Nebraska. Is that one of those things to where they were trying to make him that Baylor type safety back on the back end of that defense? Were they trying to do something like that to where he was kind of half robber? He's playing in the back in that 3 safety system that they run, and like the Haycock system out of Iowa State or what used to be. Were they doing that?
Some of that stuff were like literally against the same personnel, and they would have the same people on the field, the safety would line up in a totally different spot. Their whole goal is for the quarterback to throw it to the wrong team. They'll let you dink and dunk them, but they're trying to move that safety. Sometimes he's over the slot. Sometimes they're putting behind the linebacker. They're just change. They want the quarterback to throw the ball the wrong direction, and it's a lot of information. First year, it's not always great. It's one of those things, it's more accumulation. And this year two, it's expected to be better. But again, from seeing him play in high school, playing with SFE 7-on-7, all through the time that he was a prep, we all knew he could run. Just don't cloud him too much with what's going on. Just like other young players, it's probably better. So when like Florida State's old scheme was very man heavy, very simplistic. From going to that, it's almost like being an IndyCar driver, then trying a different kind of racing. Like that's very specific. It's not a guarantee you're going to be able to flip over and do something different. So I think that this defense, like I'm just going to assume Pete's going to put him in the middle of the field, and then against some teams, if they've got a special player that plays slot, he might play some nickel. They'll use him a little bit differently, but he won't have as much on his plate. I think that'll benefit him quite a bit.
Yeah, I've described him on my show over the last couple of months as the typical Florida high school safety that every, like Florida and Florida State and Miami have them every single year. I think this is that type of player.
You couldn't have said it better. I have always followed the state of Florida with recruiting. And if any of those three programs suck at wide receiver or DB, the coach should immediately be fired. There is no excuse for it because they're just everywhere. You can throw a rock and hit a 3-star safety. They're everywhere. So Edwin fits that. And again, depending on the scheme, athletically, like if you played an old school cover 3 scheme, he could play on the outside and be your corner. He can move. He can do all kinds of different things. He's a pretty physical player. My big question on how Pete's going to use him and what they're going to come up with schematically, how much will they send Edwin into the backfield? He's not afraid for contact at all. Do they want to blitz the nickel or from the free side, from different spots? He did it last year. Again, I think the scheme will be a little bit less complex. Janelle Aguero, same thing, but he's certainly capable. He's a South Florida kid. Contact's not gonna really bother him.
Let's just do a little thought exercise. You know about Edwin Joseph. You know about Janelle Aguero. They're probably going to be on the field at the same time. You know the type of player that they are. What does that tell you about the scheme that Pete Golding is trying to do?
I think he wants to stuff the run before anything else, and I think he wants to create havoc in the backfield. And it's based on the following premise that I think everybody has to realize. Think about the SEC last year, Stephen. How many times in your lifetime have you worried about playing Vanderbilt? I mean,
actually, as an Ole Miss fan, just about every year, but I get your point.
Even Vanderbilt can throw the ball now. You're going to give up explosives no matter what defense you run, no matter what talent you have. I don't care if it's the 2011 Bama defense. You're going to give up some explosives. So you got to create some too. Like Aguero, when you stand next to that kid, I saw him in high school at a 7-on event. I'm like, that kid's a safety. Like he looked like a pro boxer kind of guy. He wants guys that are going to be physical near the line of scrimmage and that can run. Just pure athletes. Basically what Nick would look for. Aguero is the kind of guy that Nick would have recruited. 100%. So to that end, I think we're talking about a scenario where they can possibly be interchangeable depending on how much they pick up the playbook. Big if. Depending on who they're going against, if a team runs a tight end in the slot a lot, maybe that's Janelle that plays in that spot for that game. Or maybe just for that series, whatever. They will be more flexible. And again, I'm guessing, but I'm going to project that at least one or both of them is going to be a blitzer. Somebody that you have to account for with your running back in pass pro, which running backs usually suck at it. And you have to move people to change your protection schemes. Just a counter to getting beat with big plays in the passing game, which again, if Vanderbilt can do it, anybody can, Stephen. Like my entire life, they've been a doormat. And last year they were 10-2. So I've seen it all now. I think that's his counter. Like we're going to create some havoc. That's what it tells me.
What I'm looking at this season is I think Janelle Aguero and Edwin Joseph are similar type players, and both of them will be free safeties at different times. They might both be on the field, and they're going to use that as disguise, but be able to play simple by you're not going to know which one of those two are the free safety. And I think that might be the thought process.
I don't have any problem with that. I know that Pete, again, he worked under Nick, among other coaches. I'm not just saying Saban's the only guy who's worked under, but that's a good sign. He's probably going to show some different looks, and he understands that the key is versatility. I don't care who you play. At the SEC level, if you line up in the secondary the same way over and over again, that's not going to go well. You have to disguise things. These offenses will smoke you. And think about the number of quarterbacks in the SEC this year that are either a big-time transfer, like Levitt at LSU, or they're a returning player, Trinidad included. The league is up this year at quarterback. You better disguise some things, or your pass defense is going to get destroyed. So I think that Edwin and Janelle will be a big part of it, and you're going to see them move around in different spots. But when we come back, we're going to discuss, speaking of quarterbacks, Keegan Croucher and Cruz Jenkins. They're both committed to the Rebels. They actually get ready to play. We're going to talk about them next right here on this crossover. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at GameTime. There are more live events than ever we're seeing right now. Games, concerts, comedy shows, festivals. And the hard part isn't about deciding if you want to go to an event. It's actually getting the tickets to attend the event. Long wait times, checkout processes that aren't any fun, and surprising fees. Buying can sometimes feel harder than it should, and that's why you should try GameTime, the app that is built to buy tickets, made simple. Without upfront pricing, it wouldn't be the same, but that's why GameTime's great. And they also have seat views you can use right on your phone before you buy the tickets, exclusive savings, and opportunities that help you get to the events without all the hassle. I have used GameTime not once, but twice within the last year to buy basketball tickets. Less than 8 minutes, I'm in and out. It's pretty simple. Pick the team you want, find the game, and then you just got to figure out the ticket based on the view you find on your phone. It's pretty simple. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. There's a big game between, this is so weird, two future Ole Miss quarterbacks going against each other in a high school game. That is so odd. But for whatever it's worth, Keegan Croucher and Cruz Jenkins will play against each other. Keegan Croucher is at the Baylor School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And Cruz Jenkins is at, I believe, Brentwood Academy, if I remember right. And those are two best programs in the state, most likely, depending on your perspective. Historically, it would definitely be Brentwood Academy. That's on the south side of Nashville. And again, Chattanooga is where the Baylor School is. It's a boarding program. Croucher is the more, quote unquote, accomplished player by ranking. But I had to go refresh my memory, Stephen, looking at Cruz Jenkins, and he's not the biggest guy. He reminds me of one of those East Texas quarterbacks that ends up at like an SMU or something, and as a senior and fifth-year senior, throws for 3,400 yards, and nobody knew who he was. That's exactly what I think of with Jenkins. Maybe he's a guy that ends up playing earlier. I don't know, but he's like a 3-star, not rated all that high. He's got a pretty good arm, though, and he's got a flair for the dramatic, the big play, and he's playing against pretty good competition in Nashville. I don't know what to expect out of him against the Baylor School. They got a lot of talent. But I'm curious to see some of the highlights, at least if I can't see it online. What do you think is going to happen with this game?
I think it's going to be a zoo because it's on ESPN2. It's in Chattanooga, and there's a Manning that's Keegan Croucher's backup quarterback. So I think it's going to start the zoo process of whatever's going on because Peyton Manning's son in the state of Tennessee, there's going to be people just watching that. It's one of those things that I think that Keegan Croucher, this is actually a good test for him moving forward because there's going to be a lot of stupid pressure behind him that he didn't even know that he was going to have to deal with. There's talent there at the Baylor School. I think his name is Antoine Adams. I think he went from Macomb, Mississippi, just transferred over at wide receiver. There's probably something to do there with Ole Miss as well. There's a lot of there's prospects all over the field. I mean, they're 18th in the country as it is, but they played Brentwood Academy in the state championship last year. There's top 50 players on that roster at wide receiver. There's Kenneth Simon. I think they're both committed to play for the Tennessee Vols next year. lots of big-time players for both of those quarterbacks to throw the ball to. I think this is not going to look like – I remember whenever I played high school football eons ago in another era, this first game, there's a chance you could just drop it. We lost one year. We lost one regular season game, and that was to 2A Taylorsville, Mississippi, and this is before Jason Campbell, by the way. So it's one of those things to where new season, you have all the jitters. There's no preseason game. All of that could come back and get you. I don't think that's an issue so much anymore, and I think you're going to see a higher level of high school football from both teams than you're expecting. And if you're used to like struggling early parts of the season, I don't think you're going to see that here.
I would agree. And it just as a reminder for those who have not seen the man-child, David Gabriel Georges is the running back for Keegan Croucher. That is a grown man. I'm not going to be able to define it for you with words. You need to go look that up. David Gabriel Georges. Just go look up his huddle. That's all you need to do. And I'll leave it at that. He's going to the University of Tennessee. So it'll be a fun watch. The other thing that I do want to throw out just for Croucher, he's got such a loaded roster. I don't know how we're going to be able to grade him, Stephen, because he's going to hand it to David a lot. Sometimes just keep it simple, stupid. I mean, why would you not?
Passes. Yeah.
Just basic stuff. I'm curious to see his development though, because he's at a program where they're spending some money. Like they got kids coming in from Canada, Crouchers from the Northeast, etc. They've got some money invested. I'm curious to see what he does and how he develops from last season to this one.
That campus is where the Spanish national team camped during the World Cup. That's how nice that place is. So yeah, they're spending some money.
Yeah, I would say they've spent quite a bit of money actually, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Last thing on the docket today, there's going to be somebody in the AP top 25, maybe even the AP top 10 that kind of falls off. Is Ole Miss a candidate? And if it's not the Rebels, who's it going to be? We're going to talk about that next because it's one of the more fascinating, I think, every year. That is next on here on this crossover. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Calci. Before the college football season kicks off, everyone's making prediction who's going to win the SEC or who's going to win college football's national championship, whatever it may be, the playoffs, who's lifting the trophy at this season's end. On Calci, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade predictions in a live market. And again, it doesn't have to be football. It can be all kinds of, it can be politics, it can be celebrities or anything else. But for me, I went and looked at a lot of different things the last few days, but Stephen gave me a little hint. Right now, just for the Louisville versus Ole Miss game, the Rebs are favored 69% to be Louisville, and the payout is $136. Louisville is a pretty good opponent to be predicted by almost 70% of the people to win. That's a pretty good sign for the Rebels. On Calci, you're trading against peers in a live market. There's no house, and as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of the position, trade the draft, the game, and more on Calci. Download the app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. Calci is spelled Kalshi. Calci. Trade on anything. Must be 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Calci products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. All right, Stephen, last year was not a normal college football season. Not often does the number 2 team not end up ranked in the top 25. Thank you, Penn State. Number 4, Clemson, they had 9 guys drafted and went 7-6. They were number 4. Who is going to be this year's surprise drop-off team? I saw one person on my Locked On the Portal show that I do every night at 9 p.m. said, I think it's going to be Ole Miss. I didn't comment on it. I'm like, I don't think so. I've got Ole Miss going 9-3. I think they're going to be either in the playoff or just out. I mean, anything's possible, but when you got a quarterback like Trinidad, that's pretty unlikely. Who are some of the teams that you think are more likely to kind of like, not end up where some are projecting them?
When you named all those teams right there, the question comes down to an overhyped quarterback that isn't as good as the hype he's getting. Cade Klubnik last year for Clemson. Drew Aller is like in the Hall of Fame for that at this point.
100%.
Yeah, it's one of those things that is the number one factor in my opinion. I don't think Trinidad's there because we've seen Trinidad. He's produced at a high levels. So if he just continues what he's been doing, he's going to be fine. But are the quarterbacks that maybe get more hype than they're worth? And I'm looking at Marcel Reed as a name, as somebody to look at for that. I like Marcel as a good player, but I don't think he's that elite level quarterback, which means there's more volatility. They're changing offensive coordinators. They're 4 new offensive linemen for Texas A&M. That's going to be a problem. I'm not sold completely on John Mateer. Is he a guy that is being overhyped, or is he just a really good quarterback? Because what he did at Washington State so far hasn't translated at Oklahoma, and he's getting a pass because of the injury a year ago. That defense is going to be amazing, but I'm just curious of what it will look for Ben Arbuckle running the air raid in year 2. I think those are 2 candidates for that. I think, honestly, Indiana could drop off. They're not 30 years old at every position anymore. I mean, you have a new quarterback coming in, Josh Hoover. Good quarterback, can do a lot of things very well, but until we see that level, it's going to change. Now, Dante Moore, I trust. Julian Sayin, I trust. Trinidad, I trust. And, I don't necessarily trust he's not in the top 10, but Sam Levitt at LSU, there's questions there. If he's not elite, that is a candidate for fall off, just like it was a year ago with Garrett Nussmeier. So I think that's where I'm looking for the drop-off team, is the quarterback position.
The other team that I think, and it may not show because of their schedule, and yes, I'm flat out picking on the league, is BYU in the Big 12. They've been solid for a while, but now they're the hunted. It's different being the hunter and the hunted. Bear Bachmeier had a handful of really great running plays last year, but how many big passing plays did they have? I need to see them be the hunted this year.
Yeah, the quarterback wears 47. The quarterback wears 47. Get out of here with that.
That is a really weird thing. He's a good football player, but I don't think he's got enough talent to work with depth-wise at receiver. Like, if they have any injuries, anybody with a real defense is going to give them some problems. But
yeah, I will say this before we get out of here. If you're wearing 47 at quarterback, you better be running the Notre Dame box. Seriously.
Oh, the box 4. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's from over 100 years ago, but that would be hilarious. I don't even know if that formation's elite. Well, I guess you could put 3 in the backfield, put the quarterback back there. You could.
Believe it or not, when I was in high school, we played Columbia High School in the playoffs, and they ran the Notre Dame box with a spinner and everything in 1992. So it existed at least during my lifetime whenever I was playing ball.
Wow.
But yes, Columbia High School, where Walter Payton went to high school, ran the Notre Dame box as recently as the early 90s.
I did not. I can't say that Stephen, I've been to a bazillion high school games.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen the full box.
Yeah.
Anywhere.
Spinner and everything at quarterback. It was amazing to see.
I bet it was not much fun to prepare for either. Oh,
no. The scout team that week, there was a lot of yelling from the coaches because it was just different. It was weird. It was basically the Wildcat over and over again, but you didn't know who was the Wildcat.
Oh, that's not a good time at all.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't want any part of that. There's a reason I don't like watching option football, like Navy and stuff. I want to know where the football's at as a spectator. Just call me crazy, but that's just me. Stephen, please tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
All right, you can check us out at Locked On Ole Miss on YouTube. You can check us out on Locked On Ole Miss Hit on YouTube. That's launching Monday. You can check us out at OleMissHub.com, where everything's going to live, the Everydayer Club. We have contributors from all over the place, all of that. And join our local Discord server. We'd be glad to have you there. You can join that at OleMissHub.com. And we're available wherever you get your podcasts.
Appreciate it. You can find the Portal Podcasts all the same places you find Steven and Locked On Ole Miss: YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Podbean, Amazon, and more. This has been a crossover, Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On the Portal.